Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum Vision Strategy Trends. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booth at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. And very important, to ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Michael Forey, Director Data Platform at Stack Overflow. We are so excited to have Michael with us for his thought leadership presentation titled Measuring Efficiency and Collaboration with Knowledge Reuse. Welcome, Michael. Over to you.
Thank you, Vicki Lynn. My wife and I have 4 little girls at home. If you were sitting in our living room, you might hear the following exchange. Mom, 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 can I have a snack? Yes, sweetie. Mom, 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 can I have a snack too? Yes, sweetie. Mom, Mommy, Mom, Mom, Mommy, can I get a snack? Go ahead, sweetie. And last but not least, Mom, 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 can I get a snack? Yes, sweetie. Our 4 little girls are adorable, to be sure. But getting asked the same question 4 separate times can get a little grating. At Stack Overflow, we know that the impact of getting asked the same question time and time again, and we've started to work on knowledge reuse to reduce these repetitive questions. My name is Michael Forey. I'm the Director of Data at Stack Overflow, and today we're going to be talking about measuring efficiency and collaboration with knowledge reuse. You might recognize our brand. Stack Overflow is one of the most popular companies in the world. We have 100 million developers visit our website every single month. And with 52 million questions on our site, there's a high chance that your developers are already looking at our wide variety of questions and answers. We are the largest platform for developers and technologists in the world. We've evaluated some core challenges that technologists face in their teams. We know that speed and efficiency of onboarding new team members and giving existing team members the space to upskill is a constant challenge. We've also seen that bringing people together across a wide variety of teams is also a challenge to solve big problems. On top of all of this, we see that distributed teams face challenges with communicating and collaborating. Whether you're working remotely and you're always talking to someone over the video, or maybe you live and work in the same building but on opposite sides and you have to travel across areas to see each other. Every organization, both small and large, is driving towards scale with an eye on operational efficiency. You're thinking about how you can do more with less. Collaboration and efficiency go hand in hand. And this isn't a small problem. We know that 68% of developers encounter a knowledge silo at least once a week. And 75% of developers need help from somebody outside of their immediate team. It's not a new problem, and it's not going to go away on its own. We ran an annual developer survey, and we see that technologists continually have problems articulating their problem. 39% of developers say they often or always have multiple keyword searches when they're trying to learn something new. And articulating a problem is a skill set in itself. It can take your developers 5 years to ramp up and just become mediocre at figuring out how to ask the right question. And then even your skilled workforce, a third of the time, they're still struggling to find the answers to their problems. It takes time to discover your solutions. 25% of developers spend over an hour searching each day. 62% of developers spend more than 30 minutes each day searching for answers or solutions to their problems. And And developers and technologists have to glue together all this different information. 77% of developers say they always or often use many resources, not a few or a couple, but many. What this shows us is that it's often a challenge for technologists to get the knowledge that they want. On top of all of these challenges, there's the waiting. Over half of developers wait and rearrange the work that they're trying to do because they can't make progress because they're waiting on an answer to the question that they've asked. And the problem isn't just on the people that want to learn, the people that are asking the question. The problems are also impacting the people that are answering these questions. 46% of developers spend more than 30 minutes a day answering somebody else's question. And get this, 49% of those developers are answering the same question time after time after time. Not unlike my wife, answering the exact same question from our 4 little girls. Now, pause and think. How many technologists do you have in your organization? We don't need an exact answer, but think, how many developers, how many scientists, engineers, analysts, researchers do you have? How many of them do you think are answering the exact same questions over and over again? How much time do you think is being wasted just trying to ask the right question? How many roadmaps are impacted by waiting for an answer or providing the same answer again and again? I'd bet it's pretty high. So what do we do? Do we just say, just another day at the office? Of course not. We're problem solvers. And this is a problem that needs to be solved. It's a problem that we need to solve. So let's start measuring the efficiency of your knowledge cycle. Knowledge reuse is a recycling process. An individual or group reuses knowledge gained and shared by someone else. Examples of knowledge reuse include finding an answer to a question that somebody already asked, looking something up in a document that's already been written out, or a colleague telling you a hack that they found at work. The power of knowledge is measured in how many times it was useful. Let's take a look at an example. This is a very simple question. You might be a little bit far removed from Git, but I assure you your technologists are using Git, and this is something that they've either answered themselves or they're struggling to answer now, and it's impacting their work. How do I undo the most recent local commits in Git? It was asked on stackoverflow.com nearly 13 years ago. Today, the question has been edited more than 90 times. It's been upvoted nearly 24,000 times, and it's viewed over 10 million times. More than 10 million people have come to this question to get an answer about how to use Git. All of this was done simply because a person that had a question had the audacity to ask that question in public. And then somebody else had the audacity to answer that question in public. If you have a question, there's someone at your org that probably has the answer with all the historical context that might prove valuable. But making that scalable, that's a real challenge. We see that 62% of Stack Overflow users visit the exact same question multiple times in a 3-month period. This represents somebody having a problem that they want to learn, learning on Stack Overflow, moving on with their workflow, coming back again with the exact same question, learning it, and then moving on with their workflow. Knowledge reuse isn't a one and done thing. People are repeatedly searching for the same question, and they're doing it a lot. Knowledge reuse is important for leaders. It's important for you to encourage because it reduces risk, it increases effectiveness, and it scales. What more do you need? The more information that's available, the more it's used. And the more it's used, the more it's used by more and more people. This is definitely something that we need to be encouraging in our organizations. With that background, let's talk about how we measure knowledge reuse today on Stack Overflow for Teams. We look at knowledge view events without a question being asked, and then we normalize it by dividing by the total number of users. This means that if you are one person and you look for one thing and you don't ask the question, you've learned one thing and you've successfully reused knowledge that already exists once. And if you do that 5 times, you've successfully reused knowledge 5 times. And your knowledge reuse score is measured at 5. Let's look at an anonymous company that we work with. Here's data from a major software company. We can see on the far right in August that 185,000 pieces of knowledge were learned during that month across the entire company. To make this personal, ask yourself, how many questions do you think your teams ask each other? This graph represents 185,000 questions that weren't asked in a given month. Here's the same data, but on a per user basis. The 185,000 questions, that equates for this company to a score of 1.5. That means that for every person in that organization, 1.5 questions weren't asked in that given month. This means that in your organization, 1.5 questions weren't asked. 1.5 questions per user didn't have to ask their teammates, how do I do X? And they didn't have to wait around for an answer. But also the opposite is true. Your team didn't have to answer those questions because the knowledge was already available on Stack Overflow for Teams. It's important to create a network effect to drive knowledge reuse. Knowledge reuse scales well. I'm going to go through each of these 4 in detail, but here they are. 1, we want to uncover subject matter experts, SMEs. We can also create them if they don't already exist by giving them time to learn and investigate. And as leaders, we definitely should be creating more subject matter experts. We want to make sure that knowledge is easy to capture and for others to reuse. We want to ensure that the knowledge can be discovered within workflows and is integrated into existing tools. And we want to make sure that the knowledge is resilient. Even information incurs debt when it's not maintained. So 1, we want to find and empower your SMEs. They hold answers when your team has questions. They're the experts across your organization. And frankly, your team may not even know that these SMEs exist. And you should create asynchronous paths for your team to find their answers without impacting these SMEs. 2, we don't want to conflate documentation with knowledge. Long-form documentation can feel like a burden for writers and maintainers. It's necessary sometimes, and we should use it when necessary, like customer-facing products or platform-level technology. We don't want to create too much of it because of the burden that it can represent. Knowledge represented through questions and answers are smaller, they're more scalable, small time investments, and that makes it easier for both writers and readers to get to the action that they need. 3, we've all heard the phrase, knowledge is power. Well, finding knowledge can be even more powerful. Perhaps what rings truer is the fact that knowledge is powerless if it can't be found. There's little difference between the person who can't find the information and the person who doesn't even have access to it. You have to centralize it, make it easy to find, make it the first place anyone looks. You need to integrate it into the workflows that everyone is already using. 4, we want to automate resiliency. The two biggest problems with knowledge management is first, you have to get it out of people's heads. And the second is that it quickly becomes out of date. Just like code or tooling, no matter how big or small, even information has to be maintained. This is very personal for me. Over the years, as an engineer and leader, I've seen documentation platforms have limited lifespan because it becomes out of date. People lose confidence in it, and it eventually becomes a ghost town. We launched a new content health feature in Stack Overflow for Teams based on deep product research with our users. We created a call to action to review existing content based on the last update and the frequency of use to prioritize where we have the most impact for their investment. What we found was pretty surprising. After 90 days of onboarding customers to Stack Overflow for Teams with content health, monthly editing activity increased by over 600%. Not only was there an obvious need to keep information up to date, but people were eager to do it. We provided them a mechanism for them to be able to identify, prioritize, and update it easily, and improved the use of our tools and of our company's delivery and protection of the SMEs. Knowledge reuse is impactful because it is the measure of collaborative and efficient teams. And with that, I'd like to move on to questions.
Thank you so much, Michael. That's an excellent presentation. As a reminder, audience members, you can still enter questions, and we are now in the Q&A chat, and we're now going to review some of the questions that have come through. Michael, the first question that came through is, can you share some practical ways Stack Overflow's offering helps with developer tech team onboarding? You mentioned onboarding earlier.
Yes, absolutely. So Stack Overflow for Teams helps with developer onboarding. When a new member comes and joins your company or transitions into a new department, there's a lot of things that they need to learn and grow. And quite transparently, the things that they're learning are probably the same things that the people that came before them learned. Stack Overflow for Teams is a repository of the things that people are learning and how they're growing and changing. So when somebody onboards to your company or into your team, they can go to Stack Overflow for Teams and get answers to questions that people have already asked before them. It rapidly improves how quickly they ramp up and come up to speed.
Thank you so much. The next question is, I love the idea of measuring collaboration, but how does this work? Isn't it really measured by results?
Measuring collaboration by results. It is, you're right that it is important to have results-driven collaboration, to look at the speed and efficiency of a new product going out to market. You're having to work with a wide variety of people. It's sometimes nebulous to know how big of an effort a particular project is going to be at the forefront. Enabling collaboration through Stack Overflow for Teams can be done by looking at how many people outside of that immediate team is learning this particular type of thing. Measuring the time of delivery of a particular project might be a little cumbersome. What I've found in the teams that I work with is that there are certain assumptions and unknowns that other teams will have, and that they will preemptively not ask certain questions or not attempt to go and do certain things because they think that the tech team that they're working with can't even do those things, and they write it off entirely. So the impact, the measure of cross-collaborative projects is in part measured by how quickly you can drive to market and the return on ROI. But you should also be aware that when you open up these new forms of communication, that you're going to get new forms of collaboration, new project ideas that are previously dismissed. And that's going to have an unusual impact on your delivery. You're going to have people that suggest ideas, that pursue ideas that wouldn't have been pursued before. They're going to start taking on bigger projects because before they were impossible, but now they're hard. So you you might actually see the opposite. You might see that projects are starting to take longer because you have people that are more willing to bite off more and to go further and to try and do more.
Thank you for that, Michael. Another question that just came in, how do you reach adoption by SMEs? So gain adoption.
My recommendation is just start with a small cohort of individuals that have buy-in. You gain buy-in by demonstrating. Look at all these questions that keep getting asked time and time again. If you, instead of asking these questions via Slack or email or phone call or desk conversations, yes, take those questions, put those questions into Stack Overflow for Teams, write your answer there, send a link to that person via whatever mechanism they reached out to you. And then the next time that the next person comes and asks, the question's already there. Point them directly to Teams, and then encourage them to do a search themselves directly on Teams. And what you'll see is that people will slowly stop coming to your SMEs to ask these questions, and they'll go straight to Stack Overflow for Teams. Then comes the next part of spreading from one cohort of SMEs to the next cohort of SMEs. I would encourage you to document the success that this first cohort had by demonstrating the number of questions that weren't asked by them and were reviewed by their questions on Stack Overflow for Teams, and using that as impetus, as drive to say, hey, y'all are getting a lot of questions right now. You might not be aware of it, and you might not necessarily feel the pain. Maybe the on-call rotation person is taking the brunt of this, and they rotate every week, and so you're not aware of the repetitive questions. But look at the success that we've seen with this initial group of cohorts. Come and bring them, that initial cohort, over to the next team that you want to expand to. Ask them to do testimonials. It's a little unusual to get someone to talk about the work that they didn't have to do because the tool existed. So get them to talk about the ease of clicking the button that says ask a question, and they type in what they did, and then click the button that says answer my own question, and then they type that in. I would also encourage you to leverage integrations, right? We talked about integrating with existing workflows, existing tools. Integrating with ChatOps tools is a very good mechanism. And we have a hook inside Slack. So if you're using Slack, you can toss in a couple of commands. You type your question as normal in Slack, and you type in a little command, and it asks the question in Slack, and it also posts that question directly on Stack Overflow for Teams so that the question is there. And then the opposite is also true. You can set tags in Stack Overflow for Teams so that when somebody asks a question and puts a little tag, you get a notification in Slack, and that question appears there. We use that to keep Stack Overflow for Teams in Slack unified. There are some customers that are passionate about not switching over, and so we want to make sure that all of this great knowledge that we have in Stack Overflow for Teams is still available for people that prefer to peruse Slack.
Thanks, Michael. I think we have time for one or two more questions. I have another question here is, where do you see organizations struggle most when it comes to programming efficiency, and any tips to overcome that?
Programming efficiency. Currently, I'm seeing challenges knowing and understanding what code is supposed to do. So you have your C# code, your Python code, your Java code, and it's one problem to look at that code and think, I'm a little rusty in this language, but I think I can figure this out. Okay, problem solved. Okay, this code exists in a bigger ecosystem. What is this entire ecosystem of code actually doing versus what is it supposed to be doing? And then what is the direction of this particular piece of code? As an example, I was trying to work with a team across the pond earlier this week, and I wanted to know when a particular table was refreshed. And part of the answer was, here's code that updates that table. And then, okay, what does that code do? What kicks off this code? And is that code really the right decision? Is it the best for the organization? And that's kind of where Stack Overflow for Teams comes in, because it's not just, oh, here's some code, but it's what are the consensus around what it is we're trying to accomplish. And Stack Overflow for Teams was able to store that information, not just the code, what it meant, but also why we chose that code, what we'd like to replace that code with, and where this code is going in the future. And now it's documented in Stack Overflow for Teams. We can come together around this group of questions and answers to start to build out a next round of project iterations that extend far beyond a single developer's ability to answer the question, this is code that is updating a table.
Thank you. Thank you. This will be our last question. I love the mention of Teams Slack integration. Is the Stack Overflow product a website /tools/software for sharing?
Stack Overflow for Teams is, if you go to stackoverflow.com, we have a question and answer website. It is a website. Stack Overflow for Teams packages that up, moves it to a different website, so it's still a website. And we give individual companies their own private version of stackoverflow.com that's catered to you. So it is a website where your company and all of its members can go and ask questions within your company and answer those questions. So you can think of questions and answers as an opportunity to talk about a project that you are about to deliver. You can ask a question that you wish somebody asked you and answer it yourself, or you can ask teams across your company things that you don't even know where to begin. Hey, I have this really weird legal problem. Who can I talk to about getting approval on this particular contract? And then legal can jump in and answer that question. And then the next person can come and say, oh, this is the proper procedure for getting a legal approval, or onboarding a new piece of software, or updating code commits, or so on and so forth.
Thank you, Michael. Terrific answers to some wonderful questions. Thank you, audience. And thank you for your insightful presentation today. I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic thought leadership presentation. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Thank you again, Michael.